Hello, Radiant Rebecca. I'm excited about this playlist because this could be people's first introduction, possibly, into Pleasure Central Radio.
Yes.
So because that might be the case, I was hoping that we would get started kind of talking about what Pleasure Central Radio is.
Well, Pleasure Central Radio is a podcast we've had running for about 5 years, and it is all about pleasure. Some of it's sexual pleasure, some of it is just, how good can you feel in your everyday life? How much can you enjoy the food that you're eating? And how much pleasure can you get out of your life in general, in your world? And for me, I find that the really deep key to true pleasure is lining up the things that I'm creating in my life with my real values. So that's where we're starting out for this podcast, for this playlist.
And often one of the most important sources for people, or one of the biggest sources of joy and pleasure for people, is their relationships.
Yeah. The beauty of relationships and partnership is that it can encompass, and it's often intertwined with so many aspects of our lives. And I find that the more aspects of our lives we're able to get into alignment with our true values, then the more fruitful everything else feels like it is.
We talked a lot in the episodes that you and I have recorded together. We've talked a lot about clarity and about how finding clarity for all different aspects of our lives, especially our relationships, is super valuable. In fact, you have, I think the way you had talked about how you picked these episodes was what you call a self-respect circle.
Yeah, actually, one of the reasons that I came up with the playlist the way that it is I had some mentors who were saying, if you're going to curate your content, and I've got 100 episodes out there now, so curating it is the easiest way for people to actually dive into it and get the most out of it right away. So if you're going to curate your content, find some way of pulling it all together. And I realized that for a lot of my listeners and for myself, a big piece of relationships is figuring out how can I get what I truly want and the love that I want, the needs that I have met. How can I get all of that met and do that in a loving relationship? And it's a very tricky balance. There's a lot of things that need to be taken into consideration. And in my experience, the clarity for what really matters is where it all starts. And so that's why I've called this a self-respect playlist, because each one of these episodes helped me figure out what was important for me to maintain my self-respect, both in my work as a courtesan and as a sex worker, as a polyamorous person, but also to continue to grow that self-respect, right? I don't have the same amount of self-respect I had when I was 19. I have the amount of respect that I have for myself as a 40-year-old who's done a lot of really cool things in my life.
Nice. So let's talk about the playlist itself. So as I look through the list, one of the things that just kind of goes, is blowjob tips. Tell us about why blowjob tips is in the self-respect circle playlist.
Yeah, that episode is really important to me. It was one of the earlier episodes that we did about sexual education and how important it is to continue to explore and to expand what you think you know about sex. And that one was great. And then the Sex in the Suburbs, both of those episodes, I was hoping to create them as models of how to communicate, especially how to communicate your pleasure, what really matters to you and what feels good and what doesn't. Because when we can get clearer and better at communicating that without any of the extra baggage that sometimes comes with communication, then we can start to get some really clear space and some blank slates that we can build some great foundations on.
Build great things on, yeah, you bet.
Yeah.
And then there were 2 episodes that I wasn't sure what they meant. One was called the Tanooki Method, and one had a word called compergence. Compergent. And the first thing that I do when I hear a word that I don't know, of course, is I go to dictionary.com, and guess what?
It's not in there. Yep, that's right. Dictionary.com has not quite caught up with the poly world. But yeah, compersion is a very interesting concept. It's one that I've found to be really helpful for me in relationships, but it's the idea of pleasuring your partner's pleasure. So if your partner really wants to be a lawyer and they're going to school and they're enjoying it and you're helping support them, that might be one form of compersion. You're getting pleasure at your partner, getting to go out and do what they really want to do with their lives. But in the poly world, it's more often about pleasure at your partner's physical pleasure. So maybe someone you're dating is going out on a first date with someone else and they get to have sex and you're all excited. That's great. Yeah, compersion is a powerful thing. And the other one, you said the Tanooki Method. I know you were pretending to not know what that is. It's an episode with a woman named Tanooki, who is another courtesan who I've known for a long time. And she's also poly, and we have some very similar lifestyle and history. So it's fun to get to have conversations with her about relationships and long-term partnerships. She's also a long-term partnership kind of poly person. And in that episode, we talked about models of consent and how to figure out whether you're getting the consent that you think you're getting, or how to invite somebody so that you can get consent properly. And that was pretty interesting. But for us, in that episode, the high price of admission was kind of the star of that particular one. And being able to create your own moral code. Because I think at some point, most of us as adults, we realize that what we were taught as kids might need to be updated. Society is updated. We're no longer as connected to the religion or to the whatever ideologies we were brought up with. And now it's time to look at it for ourselves and make some choices as an adult. And so that's a big part of what Tanooki and I talked about in that episode.
Great. One episode that you and I did together was a boudoir episode.
Yes.
I said that in a very beautiful French accent. And a big part of that was where we talked about having an accurate view of yourself and really getting some good clarity about who you are. You want to expand? I know there's other episodes that kind of dealt with the same subject or similar subjects.
Yeah, there are other episodes that deal with that, like recognizing who you are now, how far you've come, and letting that be a badge of honor. So the boudoir episode is particularly about seeing yourself through the eyes of the camera, through the lens of the camera. And cameras show us what's real. So being able to go through that process and see the reality of what's being reflected in your face and in your body and in your clothes is a very interesting process, and one that I think is critical for helping increase your level of self-respect and self-awareness. And part of having an accurate view of yourself is knowing what truly matters to you. What are your bottom lines of relationship? What are your most important things that if those aren't getting met, then there's really no point of investing in a relationship. And also looking at what are the things that are fairly small that you can totally put up with or make agreements around, because it's not a deal breaker. It's important, but it's not enough to be a deal breaker.
And then there were a couple of fun episodes about connection.
Yeah. Connection is important. And I think connection is required for intimacy. And I think intimacy is required for good partnership. So it all settles on connection. And there's so many different ways you can connect with people. I put a couple of episodes in here that are specifically connected to nourishing. So nourishing yourself, nourishing your relationships, nourishing the people around you, your family, etc. For those of the 5 Bright Moments game that I talk about and the Joy Bank, those are, my go-to nourishing things. But for longer term partnerships and things that are a little bit more serious or that have a few more moving parts, the full moon partnership ritual is another great one for nourishing a partnership and helping it grow. And to finish off the playlist, we have a very short gem of an episode. It's one of my favorites. It's a peek into an intimate moment with me and one of my partners. And the reason that I like it so much is we recorded it just after doing one of our full moon partnership rituals. So we're very connected. We're very in tune with each other. We've got a lot of intimacy going on. And I actually got some responses from people who listened to this episode. And they said, I never really understood what intimacy was until I heard that. I thought I had had intimacy, and then I heard that episode and I realized I've never had that. And yeah, so that's what I'm hoping that you can listen to and get to on your own is just recognizing that there's a whole lot more potential for joy and happiness and true pleasure in your lives. And these episodes show you some of my favorite ways to get there myself. And I hope that they will also increase your self-respect.
That sounds great. Okay, so, but when you were just talking about that, the other people who were just saying that they didn't realize what true intimacy was, what popped into my strange brain is the red pill and the blue pill. And I was like, so I could take the red pill and just remain in my ignorance, or I could listen to these episodes and take the blue pill and just see how deep the rabbit hole goes.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that's a very useful metaphor. Thank you. Take the blue pill and let's go see how much true pleasure can really fuel your life and your relationships. So I know from experience, as a sex worker for 10 years, as a courtesan, as a polyamorous woman for 20 years, that these sorts of things, they add up. They're small, but they add up to a lot. They add up to an entirely different way of being in the world, an entirely different way of looking at relationships and seeing them as, how can this improve my life, instead of how can I barely get what I need from someone who kind of doesn't really give it to me. And that's a different world, and it can be really good.
So you have an overarching theme to this whole series, and it is
that clarity leads to bravery. And I hope that you find the clarity that you need to be as brave as you need to be so that you can get what you want to.
So everybody, if you haven't met her before, this is Radiant Rebecca, and it's time to press play.